Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. Guys, you are in for a real treat. We have with us a returning guest. I'm pretty sure he was the second guest we ever had on this iteration of Your Welcome when it was started at Gas Digital. We have with us my Red Eye colleague, a writer for Gutfeld, comedian Joe Machi. Joe, you're going to be here in Austin next weekend at Capital City. What is that? What it's called? Capital City?
Cap City Comedy Club, great club, just one night only. It's going to be great. Expectations are high. Last year was a blast. They had me back, and next year maybe two nights.
So it's going to be Saturday. What's the date? The 7th?
May 11th.
Saturday. Okay, Saturday, May 11th. I'm going to be there. So if anyone's in the audience wants to come say hi, please say hi so I can let security know to escort you out of the building. And Joe, so one of my favorite things about this gig is that I get to talk to my friends who are professional comics and people get to watch and they get to kind of enjoy it. And what people need to understand, I did a book with a UFC fighter once and people had in their heads that he just goes around punching people all the time. And that's not true. And people think comics just stand around like joking all the time. But the one thing I can say about comics that I'm friends with, and I'm good friends with you, Dave Landau, Dave Smith, obviously, and several others, is comics are really, really good conversationalists. They listen really well. They have insightful things to say, and it's a real treat. So, I just love being friends with you. I love when you come back to Austin, and I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Wow, thanks. That's such a nice compliment. I don't get that a lot. I'm pretty reserved around people I don't know very well. I know you pretty well though, so maybe it takes me a while. But thanks. Yeah, I'm normally not so great at talking to people.
The thing is, people need to appreciate is, despite how he looks and acts, Joe is a big bully who likes to exert power moves because he does this bit, which is one of my favorite bits of all time, his little Hitler joke. And he promised me last time he was here, he would do it. And then he didn't do it on stage out of spite. And then after the show, he's like, that's just to remind you of who's on stage and who's in the audience. And then he called me some slurs, which I won't repeat because this is a family show.
We remember this story very differently, but I did forget to tell the joke. It's already a Hitler bit about killing baby Hitler with a time machine, but I totally forgot. But I won't forget this week. Oh man, yeah.
Joe, never forget.
I forgot. I made the cardinal mistake. Not going to happen this year.
So one of the things you and I talked about a few years ago, and this is a topic that's been beaten to death, but I think it needs to bear reviving because I think people don't update their software, is the idea of cancellation in comedy. And you were a little concerned, as were many of my friends, not unreasonably, that at some point the mob's going to come for you or people you know. And it really seems to me that although that is still a concern and that still happens to people, that has very heavily subsided. And that, they've gone after people and it's just been like DOA. I'm curious to hear your impressions as a working comedian.
Well, I feel like people are starting to show up at clubs for people that they don't like their viewpoints. It's not so much comedy wise; it's more political. Like I think Michael Rappaport just had some people come to his show to protest, outside.
Sure.
And I always thought, like, I think even Dave Smith may have had that happen in, maybe it was Rochester. I'm speaking off the top of my head. I'm not sure, but it has happened. It hasn't happened like I thought it would. I think that the good thing about cancel culture is that it sucks. It's just not fun. Like, do you want to live in a world with like all these top down gatekeepers that are losers? Like, I think that's the problem with it. It's like there's this party going on and there's way less fun party. People want to be part of the fun party. So hopefully cancel culture will burn itself out. It seems to have. And also a lot of comics, there's strength in bravery, and a lot
Yeah.
of comics are just not paying it any heed and they're succeeding. And then once that starts to happen, I think the industry comes along with it, and then it starts to fade. I hope that's where we're headed.
I think Shane Gillis hosting Saturday Night Live was really like cancel culture waving the white flag. So there were several moments, one of which, and this is a minor victory, but since it involves me, I'm going to make it sound like a bigger deal than it is. The fact that I got Roseanne Barr back on Twitter to me last year was, I think, a big deal, because it's one thing to have it be a draw, but to have a win and then have that win be taken away from you is psychologically tough for people, who are working for the devil. And I also think that them trying to go after Rogan, and first they threw the racist stuff at him, then they threw the horse paste stuff at him, and the comedy mothership is beyond thriving. And because of that, Austin is becoming this big comedy hub. I talk about this a lot, but the reason I bring it up so often is I think people who are right of center, broadly speaking, are so used to taking L after L after L that they don't recognize a win, or at least some sort of progress on their side when they get it. Because you can't expect the New York Times to be like, all right, we're throwing the towel. But when Shane Gillis, who was canceled before he even started on Saturday Night Live, he had been on Compound Media, he was supposed to be on Saturday Night Live. They found old him doing like Chinese impressions, whatever, cancel him before he even starts. But now he's hosting. And that to me is a big sign of, okay, we tried, this person was successfully made radioactive, and now he's being put on a pedestal.
Yeah, that's a great point. You got to take the W's when you have them. I think
Yeah.
I think it's almost like wins for us sometimes seem like we didn't lose anything else new. So it's just like things didn't slide back down further. That's why I'm I'm so paying attention to the TikTok ban
Yeah.
legislation, and the because what's happening to TikTok here is kind of what uh, Brazil and Australia are doing to Twitter. And I think Elon Musk, his bravery has a big part to do with cancel culture backsliding, mainstream media. It's harder to lie if Twitter's not going to shadow ban people. So it's stuff that's happening that's way out of the control of people like me or Shane Gillis or even Saturday Night Live, that like they can take it all away. So you take the wins when you get them. You're right, but man, we got a long way to go.
Oh, sure, sure. But I mean, I think the fact that Gutfeld is doing so well in late night and for so long, and I mean, I adore Greg. I don't think Greg is um, like a Johnny Carson figure. I don't think Greg would say he is. It's just that just by simply having an alternative and not being a total, you know, leftist like corporate douche, he's found a very, very broad lane. I guess this would be the lane that Carson had, back in the day.
Yeah, it's so interesting because people were saying, well, you're only getting those ratings because you're the only show with a different political bend. And to me, that's kind of a self own. It's like
Yeah,
saying we're all the same. That's why no one is watching us. But at the same time, it's like they really took these franchises and destroyed them as
yes.
soon as Trump won. I mean, I could still watch Letterman and Colbert, or even like when Conan had late night. It was fun. It was still like, hey, we're gonna hit everybody, and then it just kind of went, well, no, we all have to. Uh, Not being partisan means being completely completely far left. That's the weird thing that kind of happened. It's like we're gonna we're gonna go this direction and kind of say "f you" to half the crowd.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting to me because I could wrap my head around why they didn't make Obama a punchline for 8 years, because they had to worry that if they are, they're going to be called racist no matter what they say. So maybe it's cowardly, but you can understand the reasoning there. Then Trump obviously is prime for jokes. I mean, he's a joke maker himself. But you would have thought, okay, Biden's in office, he's shitting his pants in front of the Pope. It's going to go back to kind of a Bill Clinton situation where, like, yeah, we think he's better than the Republicans. We'll make fun of the Republicans. But I mean, the guys, I mean, just Hunter Biden alone. I mean, my God, the fact that he's shacking up with his brother's widow and all these other things, you would think it'd be prime for monologues. And it's still, it was never, yeah. I mean, people who are younger don't appreciate this. Even in the 90s, like Bill Clinton was a constant punchline, even though it was clear that they preferred him to the Republicans. It was not at all the case that, like, oh, we should make fun of Bill Clinton because it's going to make our side look bad. It maybe wasn't, they didn't hit him as hard, but they sure hit him all the time.
Yeah, it kind of goes to what Keith Olbermann kind of
Oh God.
goes after people. It's like, hey, you're making fun of Biden. You're going to help Trump win. It's like, if you can't win an election because somebody tweets a joke about you for being old, that's your fault, not the
Yeah,
comedian's fault. So the whole thing doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Oh, my puppy's barking again. But
that's all right.
yep, he disagrees strongly. But I don't know if you can hear that. But
Yes, we can.
oh, good. He's a good dog. But I mean, we'll keep him away from Kristi Noem as much as we can. But yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's just kind of a shame because like there were these kind of unifying comedy shows, and
Yeah.
now that's kind of not the point anymore. Uh, and they're
Um,
kind of proud of it.
So let's talk a bit about like writing for Gutfeld. Like Kristi Noem, what you referenced, she got in heat over the weekend because her upcoming memoir. She's from South or North Carolina, Dakota, excuse me. I don't remember which governor she is, one of the two. And she talked about how she had a dog that like killed a couple of chickens, and a hunting dog, and she regarded it as untrainable. It was 14 months old. So then she took it and behind the barn and just shot it, right? And when people were freaking out about it, this is my favorite part. She tweeted out, goes, "Look, this is farm life. If you guys are upset about me shooting this dog, last week I had to shoot 3 horses." And I'm like, lady, you're not helping your case here. And I understand, of course, like where does beef come from? It doesn't come from the grocery store. You have to kill these animals. But you would think a politician would understand a bit more about how this comes off to certain people.
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm kind of torn because I like that she's a free spirit and not. It seems almost totally unconcerned. But like it's 14 months old. It's basically still a puppy,
Yeah,
and maybe you should train it keep it away from the chickens. If it's not going to do that, and don't brag about shooting. But you could take it to a shelter, and
right.
it kind of leaves her nowhere to go because now she's going to have to either suffer those jokes, take a hit to her political career, or hope that she can make puppies unpopular. And I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, so is it so how does it work on Gutfeld? Do you guys are you softball more of Republican politicians? Like how does the pitch meeting work?
We don't really have a meeting. We just kind of submit stories, and then Greg picks what he likes. And there's some like regular news people that write some stories, and then myself, Joe DeVito, another comedian, really funny, and this other guy Dan, who's written for pretty much every late night show, try to punch it up, and then we just sit and talk it over, and with Greg, and then try to find what we think is the best stuff. Kind of make each other laugh, which is my favorite part of anything is just trying to make other people laugh.
You and I share the same grief that George Santos was expelled from Congress because
Yeah.
he was just one of the absolute best things to happen in this Congress. I don't know if you saw a meme, but someone had took a meme of all these different shots of him, and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize girl bossing was against the law." So you played him on Gutfeld. Like, can you tell me how that came about? Because you did a disturbingly good job.
Well, Greg thought I looked like him because he's pretty good looking, but like I tried the first time we did the George Santos thing. I wanted to say I wanted to kind of something I think it was Norm Macdonald said that when people do impressions, they're often bad because they forget that the people they're doing an impression of like themselves. So
Yeah,
I really made a point to say it's like, hey, this really doesn't make me look bad as much as it makes the media look bad because they didn't find this stuff out until after I was already elected. So it was like no one was doing their job. That's the thing that's crazy to me about the news. It's like I'm into space exploration and I'll read articles about it. And it's clear to me that the person who wrote the article has no idea what they're talking about because they've got to write, 2 or 3 articles a day. They have a journalism degree. And there was this comment, there's this article about journalists tend to be liberal. And one of the comments was like, that's because conservatives are too stupid to be journalists. And I said to myself, well, no one's too stupid to be a journalist. That's because like child prodigies don't go into journalism. Like no one's like, what are you going to do? You've got 180 IQ. Well, is it going to be physics? No, I'm going to tell people what happened after it already happened. No one does that. So a lot of times you have these stories where it's like, it's clear to me they really don't know. Even especially war reporting, it's like they're at the war zone. They're wearing a helmet and a flak jacket, and then you see them get asked an in-depth question, and then they're like, "Well, we asked the Pentagon," and I'm like, "You're there. You're going to get the truth better from what you see than the Pentagon. What's the point? You could have done that from here." But I don't know. It's just it's amazing to me, and I think the internet's kind of revealed how unimpressive a lot of
Yes.
people are in positions of power that you just wouldn't know about. Like Kamala Harris talking about space is it's priceless. She thinks everyone's 4 years old, and you probably wouldn't see that clip over and over again, but you can because the internet.
Yeah, the thing you just said about the war zone, I did 2 books with comedian D.L. Hughley, and one of his jokes, it's just absolutely hilarious. So he's African American. He performed at a military base in, I think it was London, and he went to Popeyes, the fried chicken place, and he walks in, and the guy behind the counter goes, "Oh, we were expecting you." And DL goes, "I was all offended until I realized I was there."
That's a good joke.
And it was delicious.
Yeah, it's
So
good
yeah.
stuff.
Folks, I had stomach issues my entire life, and I've been talking about this for years. It was by taking probiotics that I became a normal human being, something I thought, well, in this context at least, something I thought I could never be. So I am delighted to talk to you about Just Thrive, which is a product that not only I'm using, but is an issue that has affected me profoundly and has changed profoundly for the better. Life can be stressful, and it's not just your mind that suffers when you're tense and anxious, because stress can make a mess of your digestion and immune system too. And you can handle it with the help of Just Thrive Probiotic and Just Calm. Say goodbye to frazzled nerves. Say hello to a steady, chill, more relaxed you. So Just Calm's exclusive mood lifting blend is clinically proven to help you relax and breathe a little easier in as little as 4 weeks. And for the next level mood and immune support, use Just Thrive Probiotic, which is award winning. It not only has 1,000 times better survivability than most probiotics, but this spore probiotic banishes bloat and constipation so your gut can produce more of serotonin, which is the happy hormone. And ask yourself, if these probiotics that you see at the store have to be refrigerated, how can that probiotic survive your 98-degree body if it can't stand room temperature? Doesn't make sense. So with Just Calm and Just Thrive's probiotic, you'll have the ultimate stress fighting duo to help you win the day every day. And with a money back guarantee, what do you have to lose? And for a limited time, you can save 20% off site wide at justthrivehealth.com with promo code WELCOME. And to learn more about Just Thrive Health and all their clinically backed products, don't miss my special episode where I interviewed Tina Anderson, who is the CEO and co-founder. Take control today with Just Thrive. Let's get back to the show. What are there, like, topics that you guys kind of tend to shy away from, because your audience is, I think, a little bit more boomer, or a little, probably skews a little bit older than like the audience at a comedy club that you would be performing at, or like my Twitter audience?
I think if it's, I mean, I'm just speaking off the cuff because I don't know why stories are picked and aren't picked, but it seems like we've hit a lot of people pretty hard as long as it's a story like it's funny. My 84-year-old mom knows about Britney Spears, so
Right.
we covered like the story where she tried to get rid of the conservatorship with her father because it was
Yeah.
interesting to people. It's like I didn't know that kind of thing could even exist. That like you had to work for your dad because he was in charge of all your decisions. It seemed insane to me. The only thing that happens is a lot of times references and jokes might not work for an
Yeah.
older crowd that has tech stuff, pop culture, music stuff that's new. Heck, I don't even know. I like even when the Puff Daddy thing happened, I could tell you two of his songs. So it's like I don't even know what's going on, and that guy's from my era. So I mean, I don't know half the references. That's the big problem with writing for a big audience.
Do you agree with me that they blew a golden opportunity by not having Britney play Harley Quinn in the new Joker movie?
I was she up for it? Uh,
No, but I mean, she's a complete loon, and it would be like it wouldn't even be acting. It would just they just got to put a little face paint on her, put on a camera, and she's probably gonna go out and kill a bunch of people on behalf of Mr. J. This is
I
probably what she calls her dad.
I don't know. Is that Harley Quinn's character? Is she is
You don't
she a
know
little
Harley
off?
Quinn? You're not a comic fan?
Not super. I was into science. I was like into Battlestar Galactica. Big Star Wars fan. I read the Star Wars books, but no comic books. Like I like them. I like the movies, but I was never super into it. It seemed like they didn't have them at the libraries. It was something you had to go buy each time, and it was expensive.
Yeah.
So it was
So
like,
the story of Harley Quinn is that there's several versions or several iterations. She was Joker's shrink, Dr. Harleen Quinzel at the asylum, and he basically made her crazy, and she became a supervillain and his like paramour. And then the character became so successful in her own right that basically they had them break up so she could have her own stories, and Joker had his own stories. And at a certain point, she and Poison Ivy kind of had this are they girlfriends or not kind of situation, but they were besties. So and the thing is, just as a word of advice, if you're going to go on a date and a girl tells you how much she likes Harley Quinn, like just run the other way. This is Britney Spears kind of material.
well, yeah, and I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about Britney Spears. The only time I see her is in news articles, and she's always like taking off her clothes, dancing somewhere, and I'm like,
Dancing with Knives.
is like to me, is she crazy or is it just like she's not 19? Because it seems like that's normal behavior for a lot of people, and I'm not a big patriarchy guy, but like guys do crazy stuff all the time. Is it because she's female that people are like, oh, we have to protect her? She's doing all these dangerous things. I don't know. I see crazy people crazier than her. Like if she even is crazy, like I see people that are full on crazy coming out of the bus station, and no one seems to be making them work for their dad. So the whole thing is kind of confusing to me, but I feel kind of bad for it because it's like she really didn't
I,
ask for this, you know? It's like she was this
I
kid.
I love that your takeaway of all this is that policy should be that crazy people work for their dads by law.
It's like if that's where we're going with Britney Spears, why isn't that more uniform? Like this guy's got no pants on the subway. Like, where's his dad? Let's put him to work. But it seems I don't know, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about with Britney, but
I'm
it
just
seems like that was what was
imagining
happening.
you on the train and the guy's pantsless, and you tap him on the shoulder, and he turns around, and you're like, "Excuse me, sir, where's your dad? And why
Where's
isn't he have you at work?"
you know what would help you? A conservatorship. Somebody should be getting all the fruits of your labor.
And keeping you away from knives and the
Yeah.
internet.
She danced with
Um,
knives? Oh, that's
yes,
not good.
yes, it's not. It's just if you watch it, like she's got the seppuku eyes, so it's not a good look. So you have a lot of fun people coming through on that show,
Hmm.
including my new best friend Roseanne Barr, who is just like the fact that I'm friends with her is something I talk about and think about constantly. Who have been some of the most fun people that you've worked with on the show?
Well, Roseanne's a blast. I knew her from being a judge on my season of Last Comic Standing.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
you were on the same season as Landau.
I was on in 2014. He may have been, but
She's the one who eliminated him.
oh, well, he might have gotten eliminated early because we were like set up in different groups. There were people that were
Oh,
on it
okay,
that I
yeah.
never even interacted with, but
Okay.
she was great. I mean, I even when she eliminated me, I was like, yeah, I was running out of TV material that was like clean and ready. So I was like, yeah, I kind of deserved to get eliminated. So I wasn't upset or anything. Plus, it's like kind of a thankless job eliminating people from their dreams. It's like you fail. But she was always very pleasant and fun, and I like that she's kind of a loose cannon. Like
Yeah.
even now, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't say something too crazy. The internet's forever, and that's not a good way to be a comedian. And I like to think when I have a lot of time, I can think of how I want to attack an issue in a clever way. But sometimes you misspeak, even by
Sure.
accident, and you're trying to tiptoe around landmines, and it doesn't work out. Like I was trying to do a bit the other day about. I remember them saying that like Apple needed to increase diversity, and I'm like, aren't they the like top one of the top companies in the world? And I was like, what? Like, sorry for doing like a bit that's not done, but I was just like, were they like, should we make good computers? And they only asked white guys if they should make. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. And I'm doing this controversial kind of subject on stage, and I'm like, oh, I gotta say this right because you can accidentally say something.
Yeah.
Uh, I want to offend people by my own choosing, not because like I screwed up and you know. Uh, but that's yeah, that's the. I love doing it. I love doing new bits, but I do worry about stuff more than I should. And a friend of mine always says it's never the stuff you think's going to offend people. It's always something else that you didn't even see coming. And she's probably right about that.
I had a similar experience this past week. I'm doing a big podcast in next month, and I used my BDE, and I said I would really like it if you read my book before I did the show, and the host agreed to do it. Okay. And then he texts from my book, The White Pill. And then he texts me a line from the book, and he's like, wow, this is such a great line. And this was the line he read. This is the line he was like, wow. And the line is, as is so often the case, an argument over philosophy served as a convenient pretext to obscure a power struggle. And I'm like, wait, that's not funny. Like, that's not clever. Like, it's true. It's like, it's a succinct point, but it wasn't like one of those lines when I wrote it. I'm like, damn, Malice, you really nailed this one. It was just kind of a throwaway. So it is kind of interesting how sometimes a lot, like I had another friend, I was walking with her in LA, and she had this great, she's like, she rattled off some quote. I go, oh, tweet that so I can retweet it. And she's like, it's from your book. So
Oh,
it's really kind of weird. You never know what's going to land and what's not.
I love it when that happens though, where you
Yeah.
forget that you wrote something, so you get this fresh perspective of your own work without like
It's so
your own
great.
bias clouding the judgment. That's such a nice thing. Like I remember, like I found an old recorder of when I was only doing open mics, and I played it, and I was like, wow, I'm hearing these jokes like an audience member would hear them. And it was like the coolest thing
Yeah.
ever. No recollection of ever writing these. Uh,
Were any of them salvageable?
a couple of them I thought were pretty funny. But I don't think any of them made it to my act. But I was like, if I were watching the open mic, I'm like, oh, this guy has potential because it's funny when you're at an open mic, you can really see who has potential pretty quick. And there's some people who try to succeed at an open mic by making the crowd laugh, and usually that's the comic that sucks the most because they're playing to the back of the room doing crowd work and sex jokes and the easiest, lamest stereotypes where it's like the people who do I think are good at open mics, it's like it's joke practice. They're dribbling around cones, just trying to get better, comfortable, saying something out loud. And I mean, comics usually don't laugh, so it doesn't really matter if people laugh. If afterwards someone's like, "That's a good take you had on that," that's how you know someone's pretty good, and you can see it pretty early on. And I've been surprised sometimes where someone's like, "I'm like, oh, this person just does not have it," that they do figure it out, and that's a really nice thing. But a lot of times you can tell pretty quick. I was in the same comedy class as Sam Morrill, and
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
I remember thinking like one other guy was decent, and I'm like, this Sam kid's pretty good. Like he's gonna be something if he sticks with it. And I could tell from like his first 2 minutes of stand up.
Oh, it's too bad what happened with him.
What happened with Sam?
No, I'm just fucking with
Oh, okay.
you.
You know, I remember,
You got so scared.
well, I in 2020, like the internet was so negative. I unfollowed like a lot of comedians. I just didn't want to be in that world at the time, and
Yeah, of
so
course.
when bad stuff happens to comics, like I sometimes miss it, and I think that's a good thing because I usually can't do anything about it. And like even if it's a friend of mine, something bad happens, I'm always like worried, like or upset about it. It's kind of like how before cell phones, if someone died, like you might not know for a few days, and instead of being, you got 3 day reprieve on being sad.
Yeah.
So I think about that a lot. It's like you're always seconds away from like finding out about a tragedy now.
Yeah, I'm reading a biography now, and the author was talking about how back in the day, by which I mean like the 80s, if you were gonna meet someone somewhere for like dinner or to go to an event and they're late, you really had no you're like, you gotta start playing the odds. Are they gonna show up? What's their history? Do you start calling their house or calling other people? Like, we really did not, and you also didn't have your phone to dick around with while waiting for them. So you had to find ways to occupy your time. And like, I almost don't remember what it was like, but it was annoying.
Yeah, I remember it was a constant thing where it's like meeting your friends from high school. It's like, oh, we're gonna meet at the Rock, like the Rock outside the football stadium, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
okay. And then you'd go there and no one would be there. I'm like, is this because I don't really have friends, or is this because like a communication mix up? And now those are like even getting stood up on a date is kind of a preposterous notion at
yeah.
this point. Like, and I read like even into college, I got stood up on a date, and I was like, I can't even fathom that happening now. Why would you just not? I mean, why would you do that in the first place? But like, it's hard to do. It's like, are you really ever too busy to text? It happens, but not for
Mhm.
all day.
Yeah. What advice would you give to people who are trying to break into comedy other than don't? Because I remember I did it for a bit, and what was frustrating to me, kind of what you were alluding to earlier, is sometimes a joke will hit one night and bomb the next, and that really was something I wasn't prepared for.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because there's people that like people who've never done comedy don't understand that or really believe it. That like a joke that kills may get nothing one night out of 20.
Yeah.
It's so much dependent on the crowd. And when I have a good set, I say, oh, that's a great crowd. And people are like, well, you're good too. And I'm like, yeah, but when it's a bad set, I'm going to blame the crowd. So I have to take it both ways. But if you're interested in being a comedian, I would say write what you think is funny, not what you think other people would think is funny. What's individually funny to you. Throw as much of that out there to crowds as you can, and try to see what overlaps, because that way you'll be unique. So many comics are just doing, oh, what did I do, Tinder, or shaved my
Yeah.
pubic hair, or I did this crazy thing when I smoked drugs. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, maybe it's a well written joke and maybe it's going to get a laugh, but I like stuff that's a little more like weird and personable. So it's like I almost kind of tune that stuff out. Uh, and I'm just like, that's just how I would do it. And maybe you're going to figure out a way to do it that's great on your own. So, but I would definitely do it as much as you can, as soon as you can. Don't put it off. 1 month becomes a year, becomes a decade pretty quick in life. I wish I knew that earlier. I wouldn't have made so many mistakes, but like, it's amazing how time flies. And I'm sure you might know people like this that were like waiting for the perfect time to audition for Montreal or something, and then now they're 40 and they've got a house and 2 kids and they can't go out every night. They waited for the perfect moment and they missed their shot.
Yeah. Yeah. There is no such thing as a perfect moment for anybody, not
No,
even Superman. Um, how do you, and this applies not just to comedians, but to everyone. How do you, because you're setting yourself up for failure every time you get up on that stage, right? Because you really have a finite amount of control over whether they're going to laugh or not, right? And if they don't laugh, especially at first, it's going to do a number on you, right? So would you tell people in any endeavors, this isn't just comedy, to find that resilience, I guess, to kind of take that punch and get back up again? Is it
some
just
people.
listen to Chumbawamba on repeat? Is that the trick?
No, I say live in the moment and fail as much as you can, because like failure to me, it's like I remember when I liked a girl, it was like very hard for me to even talk to them. But like the more you try and fail, it like meeting girls, going on dates, the easier the rejection gets. And this is kind of the same with comedy. You almost develop a muscle from failing, where it's like, oh, this doesn't hurt nearly as much as it did the
Right.
first time I bombed this hard. And then I remember I used to take a month off if I bombed hard and really
Oh,
like
wow.
reevaluate when I first started. And I'm like, I can't do that. And now it's like I'm upset for the next half hour just because, like, I think I remember seeing some sports psychologists say if you mess up a play really bad, you should watch that play over and over and over again to almost tire out your brain from being sick of it. It's like, yes, I know, I'm bored with my own misery. And I think that's kind of what failing on stage does for you. And the opposite side of the coin too is like if you're succeeding at stand up and it's going well and you don't try something new, it's very unfulfilling. I know a lot of comedians, including myself, if the audience is great and you're killing, but you didn't try a new bit, it's like, oh, I wasted that crowd. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, right. Because that's the perfect audience that's receptive to. They'll be generous enough that if the new bit is only meh or not worded correctly, it's not going to ruin the trajectory of the whole night.
you're not going to lose them. And sometimes the worst
Yeah.
part is when they stop paying attention. It's like you're not
Okay.
even there. You almost wish they would heckle you. So at least you had something to talk about that they were engaged in. It hurts way more when they're not paying attention.
Folks, traditional bed sheets can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat, which can lead to acne, to allergies, to stuffy noses, and it is gross. Miracle Made offers a full line of self-cleaning, eco-friendly bedding such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent 99% of bacteria and require 3 times less laundry. They're infused with silver, and that prevents up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, which leaves them staying cleaner and fresher 3 times longer. No more gross odors. And by using these silver infused fabrics, which were inspired by NASA, the Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long so you get better sleep every night. They're very comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Miracle Made sheets are designed for your skin. Bacteria can clog your pores. It causes breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Here's all you got to do. Go to trymiracle.com/malice to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo Malice at checkout, you get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you aren't 100% satisfied, full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/malice. Use code malice to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/malice to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Folks, did you know Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the US? They've got more than 10,000 different kinds of plants and over 2 million happy customers. They have everything you could possibly want: fruit trees, palm trees, evergreens, and so much more. Whatever you are interested in, they have it for you. So find the perfect fit for your climate and space. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to order online, and your plants are shipped directly to your door in 1 to 2 days. And along with their 30-day Live and Thrive guarantee, they offer free plant consultation forever. And they were very smart because they said, hey, Malice, we're going to give you a gift certificate. Pick out whatever tree you want. And I did. And they sent it over. And it was great. It arrived in wonderful condition. So I can speak from personal experience that these guys know what they're doing, because the experts at Fast Growing Trees curate thousands of plants so you can find the perfect fit for your specific climate, location, and needs. You don't have to drive around to nurseries and big gardening centers because they make it easy to order online and they're shipped to your door in 1 to 2 days. And this spring, they have the best deals online, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to this show get an additional 15% off their first purchase when using the code WELCOME at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code WELCOME at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code WELCOME. The offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. Thank you to Fast Growing Trees, and let's get back to the show. Can you tell us the story of either the last time you bombed hard or just one time you bombed hard that was pretty memorable? Because I'm sure it must have been funny in retrospect.
Yeah, I bombed. There was this guy, Ed Lover. He used to co-host Yo MTV Raps,
Yeah.
and Caroline's had this show that he would do, and it was supposed to be, I think, at 12:30 a.m. on Saturday. It was
So
Ed
it's
Lover.
technically Sunday?
Yeah, it was Ed Lover and
Okay.
friends. And I might be wrong, but I think DL Hewley was the comedian that weekend for the early shows. He had like the prime spots, and he apparently was late and then went long. So our 12:30 start time was pushed back to 2, and
Oh,
it was a full crowd, and the audience was
oh,
kind of pissed, and it was mostly black except for one white family that they sat front and center, which was everyone kind of had fun with that except me. And then the GM thought, "Oh, you're quirky. They're gonna love you." And they, I just think it was the situation, but they hated me. And 5 minutes in, no one was paying attention, so the DJ played rap music during my set. He just started blasting rap music. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna wait here. And then Ed Lover got on stage, and he was very nice about it. He was like, "This is harder than it looks," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I've been doing this pretty well for a little while now." And yeah, that's just embarrassing. Where it's like they would rather hear rap music, and honestly, I would rather hear rap music than going up there.
do you? When was this? Last month?
Probably 20. I'd already been on TV. I think it was like 2012. Uh,
Okay, so it's been a while.
yeah, it's
Okay,
been a while. Yeah, but bombs
I
just happen. I mean, usually it's like late, drunk, tired,
yeah,
and then something bad happened earlier. Because like stand up, there's scenes all over the country now in big towns, so the clubs don't have to go out and hire feature acts and MCs from some other town that are proven entities. They give it sometimes to new people, and sometimes they just aren't up to the task. So sometimes they paid for an hour and a half show and they've seen 45 minutes of not so great acts. And sometimes it goes great, but sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes they're mad by the time you get up, and then they think that I booked the entire show. So
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that can they dig
Did
you
you
a hole.
did that screw you up, or did you think it was funny, or how did you react to that?
I was relieved, and I think Ed Lover said like, "Oh, if I screwed up, it was on a Friday and Saturday too." And he said, "You don't have to come tomorrow if you don't want to." And I said, "I'd really like another shot." And he said, "Okay," which was really nice of him. Like, someone bought hard. He might have said, "Yeah, maybe this isn't the right crowd." He could have been nice and said, "Don't come up." But he's like, I'll give you another shot if you're willing to take the abuse." And I ended up doing really well. I had this joke about
Oh,
how
okay.
my bank password is the N word because I would never tell that to anyone. And they loved it. And I didn't even get to it the night before. So it was like, oh, I felt like I really learned something about I got to stick with it and persevere, because that's the biggest part of stand up is like you got to stay in there
Getting to the
because
N word.
even the best comics. I'm sorry. Oh
Yeah, the lesson of comedy is you got to get to the N word.
yeah, you got to. It was a fun joke about the N word. Where the joke is I don't say it, and they loved it,
I
and I was like,
I
oh yes, I
I'm
made it
just
work.
imagining you bombing really, really hard and being like, "No, no, guys, wait, I got an N word joke for you. Just stick with it a little longer." That's
Well,
really cool that he understood that this wasn't that you sucked, but that it just was a mismatch that night. That's pretty. Is that common or is that rare?
I think that's pretty rare, and like especially a guy who doesn't come from a comedy background, and it's his show, and he didn't book me. The GM booked me, so he's probably like, "What is this like really smooth, cool, hip white guy doing here?" It didn't make any sense. But he was so cool about it. I mean, I think even me, I'd be like, oh, "Are you sure you want to be back here tomorrow?" I'd have probably
Did
let him, but in that
did
situation, reversed. But
did you do you remember if you got paid?
you get paid, yeah. I mean, it was good money.
Oh,
I remember, and he sold that. Those shows were sold out.
yeah.
Unfortunately, Caroline's closed now. It's a whole
Yeah, I
different
know.
world. Times Square is a different place now. There's a ping pong place where Caroline's used to be.
Joe,
Yeah,
my audience is exclusively white. You don't talk about A Different World or The Cosby Show or any of these references. They won't understand them.
different. I forgot about that show.
Talk about Paula Deen. That's what they like.
Well, I'm back to the N word. It all comes full circle.
You know, you make sure you guys watch my episode with Kurt Metzger because he has this whole bit about Paula Deen. It wasn't even from his act. I don't. Maybe he put in his act, but he went down a rabbit hole, and he was like, what happened was she was a bank teller and she was robbed at gunpoint. So she had to be traumatized into using that term. And Kurt's like, this old fat Southern white lady said it once. Like, she's the most progressive person who's ever lived. He goes, they should put a statue of her in Atlanta, and dads will bring their sons to look at it, and the plaque will say she only said it once.
She's got
Do
like
you
a
know
good
Kurt?
average for the stereotype. I mean, yeah.
Do you know Kurt? He's absolutely amazing. Have you had him on?
He's been on Gutfeld a few times. That guy is
Okay.
just fearless. He's so funny. I've seen him turn crowds
Oh
that
yeah.
weren't good to like to where he's just crushing because he's so good. I've also seen him make some people upset, but like he's
Oh
just
yeah.
is so good natured. I think he's one of the best going.
He comes to town and we hang out, and it's one of the great blessings of my life because he's one of the few people where I just literally sit down and shut up and let him talk, and I'm just eating it up like cream corn. It is just the best thing ever. He's like a Roseanne. He doesn't know how to turn it off, and it's just constant hilarity. And he's just a great guy in general as well. How would you advise? Because a lot of people listening to this are going to have to write like maybe like a roast for their brother's wedding, or something for their boss. I don't know, something like that. There's I strongly believe, because I've done this myself, maybe not too successfully, that you can learn how to write humor, right? Maybe you're not going to be great, but you could certainly be better, right? So there's got to be certain techniques that every layman could pick up to become at least like a C plus.
Yeah, definitely. It's really whether or not you listen to the crowd and you're self aware. Because there's people who do terrible and they think they're doing well, and they blame the crowd or they don't even understand that they didn't do well. So they never try to correct it because they don't think they're a problem. Kind of like it's hard to convince a psychopath they're a psychopath.
Right.
But yeah, if a lot of stand up comedy is like a form of writing, and the most important part is that it's clear and concise. So setup, premise, punch. It's got to be really quick, but it's also got to be informative enough. You have to have all the elements there that people know what you're talking about. In my opinion, it should be like a broad group of people could conceivably laugh about that, even if they don't agree with you, even if they don't like it. Like I laugh at jokes that I don't like the politics of, if I think it's a good
Sure.
joke. That's the hard part. It's getting people to be able to boil this thought down to like a very laser focused thing because comedy's supposed to be a punch, not it's punches are focused and hard and precise, and that's the big problem people have. A lot of class clowns are just obnoxious, and all the work is done for them. So if they make a joke in class, everyone saw all the details they don't have to say. But if you had them try to like recreate that joke to people who weren't there, it wouldn't work because it just all those elements you can't boil them down too quickly, or they don't have the skill to do it.
And part of it is you're clowning the teacher. So there's that element of rebellion, or whatever word you want to use, which would not apply in another context.
No, and kind of the opposite's true for comics, where it's like you get heckled. The crowd usually is not on the side of the heckler. So they want you
Right.
to crush them. So you have like kind of the wind at your back. If you do it right, all you really have to do is say, like, do you really want to hear this person talk? And you anything you say after that, you're already getting applause. Like
Okay. So I'll be sure to heckle you when you're in town. If I see you flailing, I'll just start yelling out, "Do the N-word joke."
I'm like, there's
But
context to
I'll
that,
say it.
everyone. Yeah, you be a good heckler though. I've seen your Twitter. It always makes me laugh. I like
Yeah,
that you announce when you're going to troll the troll tweets now.
well, do you know what it is? I have to do that sometimes because there are tweets where I can see someone, because I a lot of times people, there's even a meme where someone will say something and it's like, jokes on them, I was only pretending to be retarded. So I've been on social media enough that there's certain things I say that I know people who are marginally intelligent are gonna play gotcha. And then when you're like, I knew this all along, they're like, no, you didn't, you're backpedaling. So I have to ahead of time for those be like, I remember just recently I had a tweet about how if gravity is real, like how do planes work? They defy the law of gravity, because I've actually seen people say that earnestly, that planes defy the law of gravity. So I'm like, I gotta heads up that this is gonna be a joke, because I know when people don't like you, they will believe any bad thing about you, right? So if this is evidence that you're a dullard, then you're never going to disprove it. They're going to be like, you're just backpedaling, you're stupid, and they will always have that as proof. So for certain cases, I really do have to call out the troll ahead of time, as much as it pains me. I don't like doing it, but like I think social media, and I've been talking about this a lot recently, has really gotten dumber in the last couple of years, significantly so. And not in a funny way, but in a kind of like Lincoln Bio kind of way. And it's just like, holy crap. Like, I don't know. Have you had the same experience, or am I just becoming a sensitive little princess?
No, I think everything's gotten dumber, and people have gotten dumber. I mean, kids didn't go to school. TV shows like the bad thing about like TikTok and reality TV is like your leisure activity doesn't challenge you even to
Yeah.
think in the least bit. So it's like I always thought when reality TV came out, I'm like, oh, they cracked the code because you don't need the story, you just need the emotion, you just need the conflict and the anger and the sex and the love, and get rid of all the other shit. There's just it doesn't have to be an actor. It just has to be a somewhat attractive person yelling at another person, and you don't need all these elements. No one cares who's right or wrong, and it's like it must seem pretty stupid to someone who read a book that like you have to imagine and think and keep all track of all these characters in your head. Oh, what did he do? And just like you're just passively existing with a lot of entertainment now. And I see like older people, like I just Instagram has kind of a feature like TikTok where you just slide through and they're just like
Yeah.
it almost reminds me of old people at the casino playing the slots where they
Oh,
just
yeah,
hit the
yeah.
button and it's all computerized now and they're just like
And
you're
no
not
one's
like
home.
yeah, you're not playing a game. You're just hoping a computer tells you that you're lucky. And it's just like that's even more thought that they're doing scrolling through TikTok. It's not been great for stand up either because so many comics post these crowd work clips that a lot of comics could do if they wanted to focus on that. It's usually not rocket science. It's usually not even the best crowd work comics that do it. To me, it's like uh, it's kind of a cheat code, a way to get fans because you're skipping to the drama. It's like this conflict that's between this comic and I even know some. I know of some comics who says like they made it look like they were being heckled when they actually, if they didn't edit the clip, it was actually crowd work. They were talking to the crowd,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's like, well, there's more conflict in that. It seems like I slammed this heckler when it's like, oh, this was a long crowd work bit that you were able to narrow down to 10 seconds of something that anyone could possibly find entertaining.
This is Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Pedicy.
I love hearing people's stories of resilience and grit. This is why I created this podcast.
We are very excited to welcome Jim Gaffigan, Yasmin Mohammed, Glenn Beck, Tim Dillon, Abigail Schreier, Jeff Garland, Ayan Hirsi Ali, Sam Harris, Heather Hying,
Jonah Goldberg,
Ben Shapiro, Glenn Greenwald, Sarah Shahi, Colin Quinn.
If there's a culture of victimhood, then let's tell stories of grit and survival.
Subscribe and listen now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Joe, I'm going to tell you something that might upset you a little bit.
Okay.
So I was messing around yesterday on the TV in my recliner, filling it with my farts, and I'm scrolling through, and I learned, you're speaking about reality TV, that there is now a second season of MILF Manor. Okay. Did you watch the first season of MILF Manor?
No, I didn't even know it was a thing. I don't love.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I've had to live this, and now you're going to have to deal with it, Joe.
Okay.
This is your punishment for being a bully to me last time you were here and refusing to do that joke and then putting out your cigarette butt in my forehead as if it was Ash Wednesday, which it was not. MILF Manor, the first season. And all I could think of when I was watching this is, and of course I watched it, there's a meme of like, it's like a Photoshop of Matthew McConaughey as Jesus. And it's like a amalgam, I don't know how to pronounce that word, of Jesus. And then Matthew McConaughey picture him smoking a cigarette, like really alarmed. And it's just, he just says flooded again. So the first season of MILF Manor was a bunch of moms with their sons and the sons were trying to hook up with the different moms. So it was their own sons. And for me, the big question is, how did you cast this? Because you had to have a bunch of females who want to date younger men who also have sons who are willing to date older women. That's pretty hard to stick that landing, to get both elements of that package, right? And I looked up an article how they did it, whatever, that's fine. So you're like, okay, the show happens, it's a wrap. Like you take 80 showers in one day and you move on. So yesterday I see MILF Manor too, and I'm like, oh, just it's time to leave the earth. And I'm watching it, and I was relieved because I'm going to spoil the first episode. They had 6 MILFs, just older women who want to date younger men. They're all attractive. The women aren't gross. They're not they're maintain themselves, smart, good personalities. It's not a train wreck, right? And then you have 6 it was like 6 women and 5 dudes, younger guys in good shape, normal-ish guys, right? It was not a scandal in that regard, and they were not related. So it's like, okay, for the second season, they couldn't cast, the pairings, so this makes it less horrible. But but foolish me thinking like, oh, we're gonna have something normal or vaguely normal, just younger men dating older women. I could wrap my head around that. Who cares, right? They're adults. The episode ends with the young men's dads showing up at MILF Manor. And I think they might be competing with their dads for the MILFs. I don't know. It wasn't made clear. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Like, I'm just going to have to jump in front of a train now because I don't want to be on this planet anymore.
What a coincidence the dad show up. But I think you're kind of onto something. Like a much more interesting show would be the casting director trying to find the MILFs with the attractive enough son. It's like, well, you're a MILF, but your kid, he's kind of like a 4 at best. Or maybe the kid's interested. He's just like, Mom, no, this is going to be great for us. You're going to be the MILF, and I'm going to hook up with moms. Like that I'd like to see, but
that's true. Behind the MILF.
Yeah, it's just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I haven't watched reality TV in a minute. So to see that it's reaching new depths of depravity, I shouldn't be surprised, but I guess I'm surprised by the creativity.
I don't know. It's like I was talking to my co-writer today about Kanye West's wife, Bianca something, and it's like she's always almost naked. And I think that's where we're at now. It's like, to shock people, we're almost out of things to do that aren't felonies. So it's just like, I almost think it's a good thing, because like, now where are you going to go? Well, you're going to have to start writing the story. It's like we've almost come full circle. We can't get any dumber. I hope. I mean, maybe I'm constantly shocked because there was that show.
Yeah, Joe, the basement has a cellar and the cellar has a sub-basement. Yeah. You know this perfectly well. Yep. Come on.
That's true.
Folks, head on over to malice.locals.com where Joe will take questions directly from you supporters. Well, not directly, but from you. Well, I got a question for you, Joe. Like you like, I have a family, the Moores, I'm really good friends with in Hillsborough, Illinois, and they're like really kind people. And I think a lot of times people in cities think that people who are kind are pushovers, and maybe they are, like, to a point, like they'll be accommodating, but there is a point where it's just like, okay, like enough, like don't take my kindness for weakness. And I think you're a nice guy, but you're not a total pushover. Like I've seen you kind of be like, okay, like let's cut the shit and kind of get down to brass tacks, to use a couple of weird metaphors interchangeably. Does that kind of bother you, that if people think that you're nice and that they can walk all over you? Is that something you've had to deal with? And you've kind of, you know what I mean?
That does. It's also a looks thing too. I don't look tough, so I feel like people take advantage. I like to think I've got, I don't have a quick temper, but I do have one. I think it's also more that I'm stubborn. Like I wouldn't do vaccine mandate stuff in New York City. So I couldn't work at the club, or, I couldn't go into work. And it's just like, I'm stubborn. So I don't like to be pushed around. Like if I think a comic is going over time and kind of screwing the show, I'm going to say something. It's, I don't think being a pushover is nice to yourself. So you kind of have to stick up for yourself. I noticed that you're very good I think I've told you this. It's like when you get cut off, you're very polite but firm. It's like, I have to finish my sentence. So it's not that you're being a jerk. You're just asking for the respect you deserve. So I like to think I'm okay at that. And I'm not perfect, but like I'm not a complete walkover.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot because my friend Martha, she used to run something called cuddle parties, and everyone like, haha, cuddle parties. But the point is, she's like, humans need physical contact, and I don't, when you put in that term, it's like, okay, it kind of makes sense. And I say this, I talk about the story all the time, and I asked her, like, what do you do when people start crossing the line? People are going to get ideas. You're physically intimate, and she goes, it's you have to establish and form your own boundaries. Like, people are you have to be the one to kind of say that. And when she put in that terms, it applies to everything. Like, unless you are there to say no, other people are going to take that cue. And in terms of like shows that like you and I both do, like podcasts and stuff, it's normal for people to talk over each other. They're excited or something like that. And it's not, it's very rarely, it's almost never, I don't think it's ever been intentional disrespectful in my experience. Like, it's been the person's just excited, or they're going a mile a minute. But when you call them on it, I think every single time, or virtually every single time, I don't want to say grateful, but they're like, "Oh crap, I'm sorry." They catch themselves, because this happened to me. I used to talk over people a lot. I still do to some extent, but when I do, I try to bring them back to where their thought had left off, so that the conversation is organic. But I remember I was having an argument with Darcy Olson. She runs the Goldwater Institute now, where at least she did until last I checked on her. And when I was visiting the Cato Institute in DC, and she was talking, and I asking her these questions, giving talk, and she goes, "I'm speaking." And she's like, "I'm not done." And I'm like, you know what? Like, it was just that simple, but she was right. Like, let
Hmm.
her finish her anecdote, let her finish her story. I'm there to listen to her. She has something of value to say, or else why am I there? And it doesn't take much to hold my thought until she's done, because maybe she's going to address it. And my question will be superfluous. I'm not there to play gotcha. I'm there to listen and learn.
Yeah, and she's not saying you're the worst person in the world either.
Right.
You don't have to like throw your dukes up. And to your point as well, it's like the one of the big things I have to deal with is I like to thank people after shows. I appreciate that they spent money and took the time
Yeah.
out, but sometimes people think it's like, oh, I can grab your butt, or I can like a guy tried to give me a purple nurple last week in Cleveland. I'm like, don't do that. Don't
Are you
do that.
serious?
Yeah, it's like even like I don't like it. Like people will try to like kiss you on the cheek, and I'm like, yeah, I really shouldn't do that. Like, so I have to push back on that. And one time a dude did it, and I'm like, come on, man, like get the
Was
hell
it
off.
Gutfeld?
It just
Was it Gutfeld?
no, it wasn't. It was in a show. It's
Was
just
it
like
Joe? It was Joe DeVito, wasn't it?
yeah, it's just like some you really shouldn't put like I wouldn't dream of like kissing a lady, because
But Joe,
I saw
in
her
there,
comedy show. Like that's crazy to me. Like
do you know what it is? I'm not justifying their behavior at all. I'm just giving a possible explanation. I think your vibe is everyone's kid brother.
yep,
Like,
yep.
that's really the energy you put out. Like, you're very warm and endearing and amiable and like happy go lucky. So I think they're kind of feeling that familial, you're my little brother kind of vibe, even if you're older than them.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I try not to get too upset about it. But I do have to set like your friend said with the color parts. I have to kind of set that boundary that like, yeah, I don't want someone grabbing my butt. It just it also seems like it's such a low form of laughing. It's like, oh, I grabbed his butt and I'm a guy, and I'm like, oh, come on, man. I was up there doing Shakespeare.
I have one of the great comic minds of our time.
I'm a genius.
Would you grab John Panette's butt? Joe, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Oh, I hope. I mean, I love chatting with you. I always have a fun. It's always interesting. I hope I get to meet some like new fans that are. I love the Gutfeld team, but like we're limited. We're on cable. The audience skews older. Maybe you have some more fans I don't get to reach. So it's like I was like really looking forward to that. I got to get better at social media to try to reach more people. But it's always thoughtful. It's never a cheap shot. I really appreciate all you do. You're one of my favorite podcast watching guests as well. Like I've watched you on with Timcast a number of times. It's always good. So it's always fun for me just to be in this world is my pleasure.
You are welcome.
Pluto TV has over 300 channels and thousands of TV shows and movies for whatever mood you're in. Just open the app and something good will already be playing because it's curated by people who love TV as much as you do. So if you're in the mood for comedy, there's 18 channels that'll make you laugh. Looking for drama? We got so much of it, you'll cry tears of joy. Reality shows, game shows, sports, Star Trek, and even more Star Trek. No matter what mood you're in, there's something on Pluto TV. Just download the app and start streaming. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.